The situation is extremely serious and unpredictable. Kabul has fallen and the Taliban have taken control of most of the country. I am deeply saddened by what I see unfolding in Afghanistan. NATO's focus right now is to ensure the safe departure of personnel from allied and partner countries and of the Afghans who have helped us. NATO has been working round the clock to maintain operations at the Kabul International Airport. Around 800 NATO civilian personnel have remained to provide key functions under very challenging circumstances, including air traffic control, fuel and communications. And I would like to thank them. Let me also thank the military forces of NATO allies, in particular Turkey, the United States and the United Kingdom for a vital role in securing the airport. Operations at the airport are now gradually resuming. And during today's meeting, allies announced that they are sending additional airplanes. We have also maintained our diplomatic presence. Our senior civilian representative, Ambassador Pontecorvo, and his team have been working closely with allies and the rest of the international community to coordinate and facilitate the evacuation. And we remain committed to completing evacuations, including our Afghan colleagues, as soon as possible. The Taliban must respect and facilitate the safe departure of all those who wish to leave. The airport, as well as roads and border crossings, must be open. All Afghan men, women and children deserve to live in safety and dignity. There must be a peaceful transfer of power to an inclusive government with no revenge or retribution. A government that does not respect the fundamental rights of all Afghans and reinstates the reign of fear risks international isolation. The United States agreed with the Taliban last year that US troops would withdraw by May. And after many rounds of consultations, all allies agreed to follow the US decision. Ending our military mission was not easy. We were faced with a serious dilemma. Either leave and risk seeing the Taliban regain control, or stay and risk renewed attacks and an open-ended combat mission. We never intended to stay in Afghanistan forever. Over the past few years, from over 100,000 troops, we went down to less than 10,000 and now to 0. But what we have seen in the last few weeks was a military and political collapse at a speed which had not been anticipated. Parts of the Afghan security forces fought bravely, but they were unable to secure the country, because ultimately the Afghan political leadership failed to stand up to the Taliban and to achieve the peaceful solution that Afghans desperately wanted. This failure of Afghan leadership led to the tragedy we are witnessing today. At the same time, we need to have an honest, clear-eyed assessment of NATO's own engagement in Afghanistan. Despite our considerable investment and sacrifice over 2 decades, the collapse was swift and sudden. There are many lessons to be learned. But we should also recognize the gains we have made. NATO allies and partners went into Afghanistan after 9/11 to prevent the country from serving as a safe haven for international terrorists to attack us. In the last 2 decades, there have been no terrorist attack on Allied soil organized from Afghanistan. Those now taking power have the responsibility to ensure that international terrorists do not regain a foothold. Allies have the capabilities and the vigilance to address future terrorist threats from Afghanistan. Due to our military presence and the support of the international community, a new generation of men and women have grown up in a new Afghanistan, able to get education, take part in the political process, run their own businesses, and enjoy a vibrant media scene. Today's Afghanistan is very different to the Afghanistan of 2001. So those gains cannot be easily reversed. The world will be watching and must continue to support a stable and peaceful Afghanistan.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for the statement. I would like to ask especially about NATO rule in Afghanistan. NATO is not only US. Don't you think that decision that you or NATO took, it was wrong? How do you respond for that? And how many more failed policy will be followed before a workable one will be implemented and planned? Because when we saw the situation as an Afghan woman and like a normal Afghan citizen, you see the situation is really tough, and there is thousands of women who really don't know for the future what is going on and what should happen for them. And they are always asking, what does it mean 20 years? NATO with all the international communities inside in Afghanistan, and then we are going back again 20 years after we were on that place. And I would like to ask how that possible, the US and EU with the top of civilization in the world have beaten Nazism, fascism, and imperialism. But after the Second World War, and NATO and European Union with all this big intelligence, and they are not able to defend for the only a group of Taliban, and then you are doing everything again, put us 20 years after. And how do you see the future? And I would like to ask, as a woman, please, don't recognize the Emirate Islamic Taliban without any condition, like the agreement which is signed between Taliban and the government of Trump, and then all NATO is following that. Please don't recognize the Taliban and don't put us again in the same situation. Thank you very much.
It was extremely difficult to make the decision to end the NATO military presence in Afghanistan. And it was difficult because I share your pain. I understand your frustration. I was Prime Minister in Norway back in 2001 when we decided to send the troops for the first time to Afghanistan. And now I'm Secretary General of NATO, responsible for our presence there and the ending of our military mission. And over these years, I've been many times in Afghanistan. I met people, I met not least a lot of women standing out as strong leaders with a strong voice, and I've seen the social and economic progress you have been able to make in Afghanistan over these years. And therefore, we will continue to support, we will continue to watch, and we will continue to hold the new rulers accountable for living up to fundamental human rights, including, of course, the rights of women. And it is a tragedy what we now see taking place in Afghanistan. At the same time, there has been gains, and we all need to make all efforts to try to preserve those gains, including the fact that generations of men and women, but in particular women, are now educated, are now taking part of in political processes, and it will not be easy for new rulers to remove, to take away all those gains. So I understand the anger, but I also have the responsibility to convey the message that the plan, the intent was never to stay in Afghanistan forever. The plan was to build an Afghan state, an Afghan security force, to take responsibility for the future of Afghanistan. And the tragedy was that after 20 years, we saw a very sudden collapse of Afghan leadership, politically and militarily, that led to the advances of Taliban.